Hey everyone, Kevin here and welcome back to my channel. So after recording and editing my previous video on the whole return to office movement, I realized there is something I left out of that conversation. The fact that you're going to run into different definitions of what is and isn't remote work. And that's because every company, hiring manager, recruiter, and job seeker will look at the term remote through different lenses, and figuring out what that person or company's definition is can be tricky. That's also why so many people get frustrated when they say remote work is one thing to them, but the company they apply to say something different. And most importantly, there is literally no legal definition of remote work. Seriously, you can pause this video, go Google it, and you'll find multiple definitions that are similar, but still different enough that you'll start to see my point. I even had someone on LinkedIn a few months ago claim that there was one single definition, and though it wasn't wrong, even the one she provided was still really subjective. But a very broad definition, though, would be something along the lines of remote work is when an employee works from a location other than a traditional office, such as their home, a co working space, or while traveling, which is a decent description that most everyone can agree upon. But that's where the general consensus ends because every company has a different policy. And that has led to a lot of frustration for job seekers since they likewise have different ideas on what their job should and shouldn't look like while remote. You might think that your job is 100% at home where you can do all your work wearing fuzzy socks and never leave the house. Or you might think that remote work still means you may need to travel once or twice a year. Some may think that they can live wherever they want, while others think that remote work should be in the same time zone to avoid confusion with your team who may be on a different one. And that's just a handful from a job seeker's perspective. Think of it from the company's perspective. They may think that remote work means that you have to travel 35% of the time, or need to live within 50 miles of the office. Some believe that you need to be on camera all day to prove you're working, while others feel that remote work means you work 4 days at home and 1 day in the office, even though that's more hybrid than remote. Heck, some may feel that you aren't interested in moving up in the company by being remote, so they pay you less and don't offer you promotions or other opportunities in exchange for that flexibility. But the problem is that you'll find all of these definitions on LinkedIn and other job sites simultaneously. There's just no consensus, and that can be really annoying to sift through. What we really need are new terms that more accurately describe each role being promoted to job seekers. Remote shouldn't mean that you travel 70% of the time, but that doesn't mean that you won't ever travel. I literally just got back from my first business trip with Hanger, and I really enjoyed getting out, going somewhere new, and meeting my coworkers in person, which I actually never have since I left teaching, since I've been what traditionally is seen as fully remote. I felt there was a lot of benefit to being in person that one time a year, not only for camaraderie and esprit de corps, but to get projects and processes ironed out more quickly. After we did that, we flew home and got back to working from our home offices. However, many people would completely disagree with me there and believe that a remote job means no travel at all. And there's nothing wrong with that perspective either. Others may even say that one trip a month would still be considered remote to them. I mentioned earlier how many companies require remote workers to be within a certain radius of the office. I remember one that was always posted that required the instructional designer applying to be within like half an hour of Richmond, Virginia, just for instance. Now, I know why they do that. Hint, it's for tax purposes because they're not authorized to employ people in other states. But that kind of goes against the remote work idea. Not to mention, it's also an easy tactic to try and force people back into the office, like I talked about last episode. But overall, it's a confusing topic, and it's kind of why I've been a little all over the place today trying to describe this. But due to the lack of a clear definition, it only adds to the perception that there aren't any jobs out there. And as I've said many times, yes, the job market sucks, but I'm also living proof that there are jobs out there, even for the chronically unemployed. But when you want a job that is fully remote without any travel, which permits you a flexible work cycle, you're going to instead run headlong into the reality that many job descriptions that say remote don't provide those things and instead mandate people be in certain geographical areas or that they travel a little bit during the year. This is why, even though it's labeled as remote in the job title, after reading that, you might say, well, this isn't remote, and you wouldn't be wrong. But neither would the company. There's simply no agreed upon definition, and that's led to a lot of irritation for people on LinkedIn who simply can't find what they're looking for, even though it is actually out there. Do I know exactly how to fix it beyond having more clear cut definitions and better tags on job boards? No, not really, and I freely admit that isn't particularly helpful here. But the point I've been getting at is we must all collectively come together and at least agree on how to move forward from here so we can have more homogenized job descriptions and so job seekers can readily find what they want or people can look elsewhere when they find that the company offers something that they don't want. My company was recently hiring for 3 learning and development partners, and someone answered when I posted about it that one of those 3 roles mandated for them to be in either Seattle or Portland, and thus they wouldn't be applying due to that. And I didn't blame her for that decision in any way because she wanted to be fully remote where she already lived, even though the other 2 roles weren't actually location specific, which I had to tell her about. But look, have a remote tag, have a remote plus travel tag, have a remote plus travel and location code, and have a remote plus travel in certain regions tag, just to name a few ideas. It would at least be a start to making the job searching process a little bit easier and less fraught with frustration at not being able to find what you want, either from a job seeker's or an employee's perspective. I guess I wanted to offer some basic solutions and to send out a bit of a warning that remote isn't as clear cut as many people think that it is, and that you might run into situations where your definition doesn't align with the company you're applying to or interviewing with. It sucks. But if this happens, just close the application and move on to the next one until you find what you're looking for. It's like window shopping but for jobs. You might have to compromise on something here and there, but pursue what you're looking for. Even though it's annoying to see yet another job you think is remote, not hybrid, you have to play the cards you're dealt. Hopefully, we come up with better filters and ways of delineating between all these definitions, but until that day comes, you need to really determine what you're looking for, clearly define it, and then go from there. None of us can solve the problem in isolation, but we can be vocal about it until we find a better solution. But I think I'll wrap up there for now. Thanks for listening, and please take a moment to click like and subscribe to see all of my content. Until then, I will see you in the next video.